Hello, and welcome back to Grave Whispers. Before we begin, feel free to leave a comment and tell me where you're listening from. I love reading every single one. If you enjoy whispers rising straight from the grave, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Now, get comfortable. Dim the lights if you dare. Relax your mind. Let the outside world fade away. And let's begin. Story 1. Seriously, if you are reading this, do not call anyone. Do not ask anybody to come here. Do not send the police. Do not call your friends. Do not come by yourself. And do not try to be brave. He will kill you. I am trapped under the floor of this house. And whoever is walking around above me keeps killing every person who comes through the front door. I do not know how long I have been down here anymore. I do not know how many people have died. I only know that every time someone knocks, rings the bell, or steps inside, there is a short moment of silence, and then the screaming starts. This is my fault. I know that. I broke into this place. I'm not going to lie and pretend I'm innocent, or that I came here for a good reason. I am a thief. I steal things for quick cash. Jewelry, electronics, cash, watches, anything small enough to move fast and sell without too many questions. I know better than to do it. I have been caught before. I have even served time. None of that made me stop for good. I just got more careful. At least I thought I had. The house looked easy from the outside. Quiet street, dark windows, no car in the driveway, no lights on. The kind of place that looks empty for the evening, maybe while the owner is at work or visiting family. I had watched it for a little while before going in. I am not saying that to sound professional. I am saying it because I want you to understand that I did not just kick in a door without thinking. I checked. I waited. I listened. I thought I had a clean window. I was wrong. I got inside without much trouble. I will not explain how. That does not matter now. The house was strangely quiet, but most empty houses are. It did not feel welcoming. It did not even feel lived in. Not in the usual way. There were rooms and furniture, but not much warmth. Everything seemed too large. The hallway seemed too wide. The couch in the living room looked like it belonged in a furniture showroom for giants. The stairs groaned under me, even though I was stepping lightly. I should have noticed that. I should have wondered why everything in the house felt oversized. But I was thinking about money. I went upstairs first because bedrooms are usually where people keep jewelry. I found the main bedroom and went straight for the dresser. There was a jewelry box sitting there, a nice one, dark wood with small metal hinges. I opened it and started dumping the contents into my backpack. Rings, earrings, chains, a couple of watches. Not a huge score, but enough. Enough to get me out quickly and make the risk worth it. Then I heard a key hit the front door. I froze for half a second, but I did not panic. This was not the first time someone had come home while I was inside. You learn not to lose your head. Panic gets you caught faster than noise. I always carry a rubber gun for situations like that. It looks real enough in low light. I do not carry a real gun because the extra charge is not worth it if I get caught. I am a thief, not a killer. I have never wanted to hurt anyone. I just wanted them scared enough to let me leave. But I did not want to face whoever was coming in if I could avoid it. Despite what people in horror movies make you think, hiding under a bed actually works more often than not. Most people come home and do not immediately think to check under their own bed. Why would they? They walk in, take off their clothes, go to the bathroom, maybe sit down or sleep. They are not hunting for someone unless they already know someone is there. So I slid under the bed and pulled my backpack in with me. That was when I understood that the man who lived here was big. The bed had already suggested it. It was a California king, huge and wide. But some people buy big beds just because they like space. That alone did not prove anything. Then I saw his feet. One of his feet looked almost as long as my torso. I know that sounds like I'm exaggerating, but I am not. From where I was under the bed, all I could see at first were his feet and ankles. His ankles were thick, wider than some people's thighs. If I had to guess from that alone, I would have said the man had to weigh at least 450 pounds, maybe more. The problem was how fast he moved. Those massive feet did not drag. They flitted around the bedroom in quick, light steps that did not match the size of him. The floor gave a mild squeeze under his weight, but he barely made noise, no heavy stomping, no tired grunting, no slow breathing, just soft movements, quick shifts, and the faint pressure of something enormous passing over the floorboards. I have benefited many times from people talking to themselves without realizing it. People come home, mumble about their day, talk on the phone, curse about bills, call out for their pets. You can learn a lot by staying still and listening. This man did not talk, not at first. He undressed near the bed. A pair of blue jeans dropped to the floor, then a button-up shirt so large it looked like a tarp had fallen beside it. I expected him to leave them there. Most people do, but after he went into the bathroom and came back, he scooped them up in one huge hand. I say hand, but I am not completely sure it had the normal number of fingers. I only saw it for a second, low and quick near the floor, but something about it looked wrong. Too broad, too heavy, maybe missing a finger, maybe just shaped strangely. I did not stare long enough to be sure. When you are hiding under a bed in a stranger's house, you do not spend time studying details. You focus on staying alive and unseen. He went into the closet. I waited. 1 full minute passed. Maybe a little more. I had not heard him come out. I decided it was safe to move. Slowly, I began shuffling my body toward the edge of the bed. I kept one hand on my backpack, trying not to let anything inside it shift or clink. I moved inch by inch. Then he came out of the closet in a rush. Before I could pull back, he launched himself toward the bed and dove onto it. For one heart-stopping moment, I thought he had seen me. I thought he was diving down to grab me or crush me under the mattress. My whole body went cold. But when both of his feet left the carpet and the bed took his weight, my fear changed into something like floating relief. He had not gone for me. He was just getting into bed. The mattress sank down hard above me. It curved toward the floor under him, pressing into the space where I had been only seconds earlier. If I had not moved when I did, he might have pinned me there, trapped under the sagging bed with no room to breathe. I held still for a long time. His breathing slowly changed. At first, it was steady and awake. Then it grew deeper. Long pulls of air in, then strange, zippered breaths out. Like air being pushed through wet fabric or tight teeth. I waited until I was sure he was asleep. Then I began to crawl out from underneath him. It took forever. I moved slowly, dragging my backpack behind me. At one point, something inside shifted, and I stopped breathing until I was sure he had not heard. I looked over the edge of the bed as I came out. I still did not see all of him clearly, only a huge shape under the blanket, turned away from me. That was enough. I did not want to see more. I slipped out of the room and went downstairs. The front door gave me a problem I had never seen before. There was a padlock on it, and it was huge. Half the size of my backpack, maybe bigger. Thick metal, heavy body, a deep keyway. It looked like something you would use to lock a warehouse, not the inside of a house. Still, I told myself it was fine. I could pick locks. It was part of the job. I had not walked into the house using a key, after all. I pulled out my tools and started working on it. Within seconds, I realized the tools were too short. They could not reach the mechanisms inside. The lock was too big, too deep, too strange. My hands started to sweat. I adjusted my grip and tried again. Then, in one careless second, my tool slipped from my hand and hit the floor. The sound was small, just a little metal clatter, but in that silent house, it might as well have been a gunshot. I went perfectly still. 2 seconds passed. Then I heard it upstairs. Twin footfalls. The heavy squeak of the bed. Then a sound like a freight train coming toward me. I snatched the lock-picking tool from the floor and ran into the kitchen. I had not checked for other exits. That was another mistake. At first glance, I did not see a back door. No side door. No obvious way out. I was panicking now, moving too fast, not thinking clearly. I yanked open a cabinet door under the counter. It was empty inside. No pots, no pans, nothing. I crawled in just as he reached the bottom of the stairs. I still had not really seen him, only his feet, part of his hand, the shape under the blanket. But I could hear him. I could feel him. He moved closer, and I knew I had to get deeper, somewhere he would not think to look. Inside the cabinet, in the floor panel beneath me, I noticed a square outline, a loose section. I hooked my fingers into the edge and pried it up. There was a space beneath it. Not a proper basement, not exactly, but some kind of dark crawl space under the floor. I shoved my backpack down first. Then I slid one leg in, then the other, and pushed myself backward with my palms. It was tight, dusty, dark. It smelled like old wood, dirt, and something sour I could not name. I pulled the panel back into place above me. It took some work, and in my panic I dropped it a little too hard. He came into the kitchen. I held my breath. He was only a few feet away. I felt him moving above me. The floor flexed softly under his weight. He opened drawers. He opened what sounded like the microwave, then the refrigerator. He moved things around. Pots knocked together, silverware shifted. A cabinet opened, then closed. Then he opened the cabinet door right next to the one I had used. My entire body locked. I was sure I had left something behind. A footprint, a tool, a smear of dust, anything. I imagined him leaning down, looking inside, seeing the panel, pulling it open with that huge hand, and dragging me out by my ankles. But he did not. He just breathed, long and steady, like a big cat smelling the air after losing its prey. I waited for him to open my cabinet. I waited for his hand to come through the darkness. But after a while, the cabinet door closed. I did not hear him leave. That was worse. I had to assume he was still nearby, standing in the kitchen, listening. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it through the floor. I needed help. I knew I could not get out on my own. The lock was too big. The owner was awake. The house was not normal. My best option was Johnny. Johnny was not exactly a friend in the normal sense, but he was the closest thing I had in that life. He was good with pickpocketing, sleight of hand, distractions, little tricks. Sometimes he worked with me. Sometimes he helped me get out of bad situations. I never carried my personal phone on jobs. Always a burner. Any numbers I needed were memorized. Johnny did the same. None of his numbers led back to him. I pulled out my phone carefully and texted him. He answered within seconds. "Who dis?" Fave cat," I typed. 911? "How big is the TV?" "No joke," I wrote. "I'm trapped in a house. Owner's here." "Say less," he replied. "Send me the address." So I sent it. Then I waited. I still had not heard the homeowner leave the kitchen. Maybe he had. Maybe he had gone somewhere else in the house without making a sound. That was the worst part. A man that size should have been easy to track. He should have shaken the walls with every step. But he could move like smoke when he wanted to. It might sound impossible, considering how scared I was, but after a while I drifted off. I did not mean to. I was terrified. I was trapped under a floor in a house with a giant who might kill me if he found me. But lying in the dark with nothing happening does something strange to your mind. Fear burns hot. Then it wears you down. The darkness became heavy. The dust filled my nose. My body relaxed without permission. The doorbell woke me. For one confused second, I was a kid again. I thought I was back in second grade, waking up in the morning while my older brother and I got ready for school. Our mother worked third shift, and she expected us to be dressed and ready by the time she pulled up outside our apartment building. My brother and I used to rush through everything, then lie back down for a few minutes until it was time to go. We thought we were geniuses. That memory vanished the second I heard Johnny's voice. He was at the front door. I could not make out every word from where I was, but I knew it was him. He sounded relaxed, friendly, smooth. That was Johnny. He could talk a man out of his umbrella in the middle of a rainstorm. Hearing him made hope rise in me so hard it hurt. I thought I was saved. I really did. Come in, the homeowner said. I should have heard the warning in that voice. I should have noticed something was wrong. But I was too relieved. In that moment, I believed Johnny would talk his way inside, distract the man, open the door, and give me the sign that it was safe to come out. I imagined the two of us walking right past the homeowner together, maybe even joking about it later. The door slammed. Johnny said something. He still sounded calm. The homeowner did not answer. Johnny said something else. I think he laughed. Then Johnny said, "Hey, what's that?" The homeowner did not respond with words. Johnny started screaming. The sound that followed was like branches snapping. Thick branches. Wet branches. I knew what it really was, even though my mind tried to reject it. Johnny's screams changed. They went from shocked to terrified to something much worse. Something broken. Something that did not sound fully human anymore. I do not want to think about it. Not just because Johnny was someone I might have called a friend, but because I am still down here. If the homeowner did that to Johnny, then I am still on the list. I am still in his house. The air seemed to change. Maybe it was in my head, but suddenly I felt like I could not breathe. Each breath felt thin and useless. My lungs were working, but my body was starving for oxygen. Something big hit the floor above me, and it took everything I had not to shove the panel open and run. Johnny was screaming words now, or trying to. I could not understand him. I know this sounds selfish, but I prayed he would not say my name. I prayed he would not say there was someone else in the house. I prayed that if he was trying to bargain, he would not use me as payment. I pushed myself backward through the crawl space, away from the noise. I did not know where I was going. There was no plan. I just needed distance from what was happening above me. My shoulders scraped against old wood. Dust filled my throat. Something sharp caught my jacket, but I kept moving. Then fingernails scraped against the floor just above my head. I whimpered before I could stop myself. I cursed myself silently. I waited for the floor panel to tear open. I waited for the homeowner to hear me. But the noise above moved away. Then Johnny went quiet. The homeowner did not. Tom, 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 Tom. It sounded like he was pounding Johnny's body. Maybe Johnny was already dead. Maybe he was unconscious. Maybe he was still alive for part of it. I do not know. I do not want to know. I kept crawling backward, driven by pure fear, my limbs moving on their own. Above me, the homeowner was panting. Not like he was tired. Not like he was out of breath. More like he was angry and waiting for another target. I held my breath until my lungs burned. My fingers and toes started to tingle. Little sparks of light appeared at the edges of my vision. Finally, I had to take a tiny sip of air. I did not know what to do. Johnny had been my only option. Except the police. For the first time in my life, the thought of police made me feel hope instead of fear. I would have gone to jail gladly if it meant not being torn apart in this house. I slid my phone out again, slow as I could. As I moved, my forearm caught on a nail or some sharp piece of wood. Pain shot through me. I bit down to keep from crying out, and I bit so hard that one of my dental crowns cracked loose and fell onto my tongue. I swallowed it without thinking. Honestly, that was probably for the best. I did not trust myself to hold it. I did not want to make extra movement trying to put it in my pocket. The screen of my phone was painfully bright in the darkness. I held it close to my face until my eyes adjusted. Then I started typing a text to 911. I did not know what to say. If I told them I was a burglar trapped under the floor, would they take me seriously? Would they come carefully enough? Would they send one officer? Would they think I was lying? I needed them to come, but I also needed them to understand there was real danger. So I decided to pretend I was a neighbor. I think my neighbor just hurt someone, I typed. My heart beat hard 3 times before I hit send. The reply came about 20 seconds later. What is the location of the emergency? I sent the address. Are you or anyone else in danger? Not sure, I wrote. That was a lie. I knew everyone who came here was in danger. I was in danger too. But my thoughts were falling apart. I could feel him above me again, pacing. Every footstep felt like it was landing on my back. I looked up into the dark as if I could see through the floor. I did not want to see him. Very thought made me feel exposed, like the thin boards above me were not protection at all. He was circling. Then he stopped. That was even worse. At least when he moved, I had some idea where he was. When he stopped, I imagined him standing directly above me, head tilted, listening. I saw his huge hands in my mind, reaching down through the dark, closing around my ankles, pulling me backward into some deeper space I had not found yet. My phone screen was still lit in my hand. It felt like a lifeline, even though it also felt dangerously bright. I stared at the symbols at the bottom of the screen, trying to make sense of them. My fear was so high that I had to read everything several times before the words meant anything. Please hurry, I typed. I think there are kids in there. I let the screen lock after a couple of minutes. Darkness swallowed me again. As strange as it sounds, I felt a tiny bit safer without the light. If I could not see myself, maybe he could not see me either. I know that is not logical. Nothing about this place feels logical anymore. I do not know how long I lay there before the knocking came. Rap, rap, rap. Someone was at the front door. I felt the homeowner move, even though I did not hear a sound at first. That is what makes him so terrible. His size is only part of it. His silence is worse. Feet as wide as my chest padded across the floor with almost no weight behind them. A monster that large should not be able to move quietly. But he did. I hoped the police would take one look at him and open fire. I hoped they would not hesitate. The homeowner had to be covered in blood by now. Johnny's blood. Maybe others before him. He could not have looked like a normal man. Not after what I heard. The door squeaked open. Low voices. 15 seconds passed. Then someone shouted, "Watch it!" There was a sound like two bowling pins knocking together, then nothing. No gunshots, no orders, no struggle, just nothing. The door squeaked closed. This time I did not hear the homeowner breathing. It was like the more violence came out of him. The calmer he became. The quieter he became. A moment later, I heard something being dragged across the floor. Heavy, limp. The sound moved away. Then a door opened somewhere. I think it was the basement door. Something bulky tumbled downstairs below me. Down, down, down. Then the door clicked shut. I understood then that he had killed the police too. Maybe one officer, maybe two. I do not know. But whoever came to that door did not leave alive. I had no idea what anyone could do against him. If he could kill Johnny, kill police, and do it all so fast that no one even had time to fire a shot, what would it take? A whole team? The army? Fire? Explosives? I was trapped in the house of something that did not seem human anymore. The doorbell rang again a minute later. I froze. It could not be backup already. It was too soon. I had no idea who would come after all that. The door opened. This time, the voice sounded like a little old lady. She was speaking gently, maybe confused, maybe asking for something. The homeowner did not seem to answer. For one stupid second, I hoped he might not hurt her. Maybe there were rules. Maybe he killed threats, but not old women. Maybe he only killed people who entered. Then she said, "Ooh." That was all. The door closed. The next sound was hard to understand. I wish I could say I do not know what it was. But if I had to make the worst guess possible, it sounded like he was tearing a body in half. I shook so badly that the boards around me creaked. I cried silently. My mouth open, my chest jerking. No sound allowed to escape. I wanted to scream. I wanted to apologize to everyone. Johnny, the police, that old woman, whoever else had come because of the chaos I started by breaking into this house. Time stopped meaning anything after that. I lay there in the dark, covered in dust and old spider webs. I felt tiny legs crawling over my hands and neck sometimes, but I did not move. Bugs were nothing. Spiders were nothing. Rats would have been nothing. The real danger was above me, moving through the house with impossible quiet, waiting for the next knock. More people came. More people died. At some point, my ears stopped turning the sounds into clear thoughts. I heard screaming, impacts, dragging, doors opening, bodies falling. But my brain protected itself, I think. It made the sounds distant, like they were happening underwater, like they were part of some movie playing in another room. I became almost catatonic. I barely moved. I barely breathed. I pissed myself more than once. I do not know how many times. That might be the only way to measure how long I have been trapped down here. But even that has become meaningless. The smell is awful. The air is stale. My throat hurts. My arm is still bleeding where I scratched it. My phone battery is getting lower. He is still up there. I am sure he knows someone is in the house. He has to know. He heard something when I dropped the panel. He searched the kitchen. He opened the cabinet beside me. He paced above me. He may not know exactly where I am, but he knows there is something left to find. Thankfully, somehow, he has not figured out how to reach me. Yet. I am writing this because I do not know what else to do. I am not asking for help. That is the important part. I am warning you not to send any. If you are passing by this street and you hear anything from the house, ignore it. If you hear screaming, keep walking. If you see the door open, do not go closer. If you see blood on the porch, do not investigate. I do not know if the last person was the mailman or a delivery driver, maybe FedEx or someone like that, but someone knocked a while ago and he killed them too. It does not matter who it is. It does not matter how many people come. The homeowner destroys everyone who enters. This is a small town, and maybe that is why more police have not arrived yet. Maybe the first officer has not been missing long enough. Maybe people still think this is a normal call, a strange house, a violent man, something that can be handled. They are wrong. Sooner or later, someone will realize that the officer has not reported back. Someone will send more police, more neighbors, more curious people. Maybe someone will come looking for the old woman. Maybe someone will come looking for the delivery driver. Maybe they will bring guns next time. Maybe it will not matter. He will kill more. I am afraid he is unstoppable. And I am afraid I am never getting out of here. So please, if this reaches anyone, listen to me. Do not call anyone. Do not send anyone. Do not come by yourself. Do not come with friends. Do not come with a search party. Do not try to be the hero. Do not think you are different from the others. Do not think you will be faster, smarter, stronger, or luckier. If you pass by, just keep going. Please. Story 2. People say those are some of the saddest words anyone can read. Baby shoes, never worn. I have never agreed with that. I understand why people say it, of course. I understand the feeling those words are meant to create. A tiny pair of shoes, a baby who never got to use them. A home that waited for soft little steps and never heard them. It is the kind of sentence people repeat in writing classes and sad little online posts because it is small and heavy at the same time. 6 words, and most people build the whole tragedy in their own heads. But I have never liked easy sadness. I have never liked the way people see one small thing and decide they understand the whole story. Most of the time, they do not. Most of the time, they are only seeing the surface. There are many reasons someone might give away baby shoes. Maybe the baby was born healthy and loud and perfect, but grew faster than anyone expected. Maybe the shoes were bought in a hurry, and by the time someone opened the box, the child's feet were already too big. Maybe an aunt mailed them from another state, but the package was delayed for weeks. Maybe a grandmother bought the wrong size because she had not held a baby in years and forgot how tiny they could be. There are plenty of harmless reasons. Sweet reasons, even. Those people are easy to spot. Their colors shine around them in bright, happy layers. They do not know it, but they glow. Warm yellow, soft pink, clean blue, a green that feels like grass after rain. Their energy is not loud, but it fills a room in a safe way. When I stand near them, I see lazy summer barbecues in my mind. I smell smoke from a grill, hear children laughing in a yard, feel the sticky sweetness of lemonade on fingers. Sometimes their colors feel like fall evenings. Warm blankets, hot chocolate, and windows glowing gold while the wind moves through dry leaves outside. Safe. loved, comfortable. Those people are not for me. Then there are other reasons. Maybe the baby hated the shoes and screamed every time someone tried to put them on. Maybe the shoes were stolen from a store, then tossed away when the thief realized they were useless. Maybe they were part of some punishment. A cruel little lesson from a parent who likes control more than love. Maybe they came from an adult who bought them for a child they are not allowed to see anymore. Maybe someone bought those shoes while standing in a baby aisle with shaking hands. Not because they loved a child, but because they wanted to get close to one. Sometimes the ad is not really about shoes at all. Sometimes it is bait, a free item, a kind message, a simple pickup from a stranger's house, a reason to bring vulnerable people, usually women, to a quiet place where nobody else is watching. People are careful about big things. They avoid dark alleys. They lock their cars. They look over their shoulders in parking lots. But baby shoes, free baby shoes, nobody wants to think too hard about that. Nobody wants to look at something so small and picture danger. The bad ones have colors too. They shine out at people in sharp, stormy waves. Red that burns at the edges. Orange like hot oil. Purple-black clouds that twist and pulse. Their colors make me think of food so spicy it hurts. Of plants with thorns hidden under pretty leaves. Of the sea before a storm when the waves turn heavy and dark. There is beauty in them, I suppose. There is beauty in lightning, in broken glass, in the deep shine of a knife. But it is not soft beauty. It is thick, bitter, violent. Those people interest me. Then there are the sad ones. Those are the people everyone thinks of when they see the words. The ones who bought the shoes with hope. The ones who placed them in a drawer or on a shelf, waiting for the day they would be worn. Maybe the baby died. Maybe the baby was lost before a first breath. Maybe the adoption failed. Maybe the nursery stayed empty. Maybe the child never happened at all, no matter how much they prayed, planned, saved, and waited. It does not matter which version it is. Grief changes people in the same general way. The details are different, but the colors fade almost the same. The sad ones do not shine like the happy people, and they do not burn like the cruel ones. They become mostly gray. Not one gray, but many. Pale gray, wet gray, deep gray. The gray of old ashes and cloudy mornings in the hospital waiting rooms. Sometimes, if you look closely, you can still see tiny flashes of who they used to be. A line of yellow under the ribs, a spark of blue near the throat, a weak red pulse around the hands. But those flashes are thin and watered down. They are like the human version of homeopathy, a tiny trace of the original person mixed into a whole ocean of emptiness. Being near them is unpleasant, not painful exactly, but heavy. Their sadness has a taste, intensely dark chocolate, burnt at the edges, cold water in an underground cave, a room that has been shut for years. Even standing close to them can make that awful emptiness spread into you. People say emptiness means there is nothing there, but that is wrong. Emptiness can fill a person. It fills every corner, every space, every breath, until there is no room for anything else. It turns people into something soft on the outside and hard in the middle. Harsh marshmallows. I know that sounds strange, but it is the best way I can describe them. Baby shoes, never worn. It is such an easy ad to post. That is what makes it useful. Nobody looks at it and thinks danger. Nobody wonders why the person wants someone to come to their home. Nobody asks why they did not drop the shoes at a donation bin, a church, a shelter, or a thrift store. People see the words, feel uncomfortable, and then look away. They do not want to imagine the dead baby. They do not want to imagine the empty crib. They do not want to be rude. They do not want to ask questions. That makes it a perfect cover. Invite a stranger inside. Just for a moment. Just long enough to get the shoes. It is not like you are selling a car or meeting someone in a parking lot with cash. It is just baby shoes. Tiny, harmless shoes. The kind with soft soles and little laces that were never tied. The kind people hold in one hand and sigh over. What is the worst that could happen? That is the question people should stop asking themselves. Because the answer is always worse than they think. Nobody important looks too closely when a grieving person disappears. I do not mean that nobody loves them. Sometimes people love them very much. But grief already makes people vanish in slow ways. They stop answering texts. They stop coming to work. They forget birthdays. They cancel plans. They say they need space. They delete social media. They leave town for a while. Sometimes they are found months later in a different city, thinner and quieter and carrying nothing from their old life. So when one of them disappears completely, people are sad, but not surprised. They say things like, I hope they found peace, or they needed to get away, or after everything that happened, I can't blame them. Police may write something down. Family may call around. Friends may cry. But there is a tired acceptance around it. Grief makes a person seem already halfway gone. Nobody cares much about the spiky ones either. People should care, maybe. A missing person is still a missing person. That is what decent people say. But decent people do not always feel decent thoughts. When a cruel father vanishes after losing custody, people whisper relief. When a violent boyfriend stops showing up at his ex's apartment, people say maybe she can finally breathe. When someone who liked scaring children or hurting animals or trapping desperate women disappears, there are searches, yes, but they do not have the same energy. The posters go up. The posts get shared. The official words are spoken. But underneath all that, people think good. They do not say it out loud. Most people are too polite for that. Still, I can see it in their colors. That is where I come in. I'm not a hero. I should make that clear. Heroes like rules. Heroes have lines they will not cross. Heroes save people, because saving people is the point. That is not me. I have helped people, yes, but only because sometimes my hunger and their safety point in the same direction. I am something much older than a hero. Or maybe I am something smaller. I have never found a word that fits. I know what hunger is. That is the only thing I know for sure. Hunger came before my name. Hunger came before my first clear memory. It sits inside me like a second spine, stiff and patient. Most days I can hold it down. I can walk through grocery stores and smell bread, meat, fruit, sweat, anger, soap, fear, and keep myself under control. I can pass a school playground and ignore the bright colors. I can sit in a bus beside a woman whose grief is so deep it leaks gray into the aisle, and I can keep my hands folded in my lap. But hunger does not leave. It waits. And when I feed, I do not feed on flesh. Not exactly. Flesh is only a door. Blood is only warmth. The thing I need lives behind the face, under the voice, inside the colors. I take the heat of a person. I take the sharpness. I take what makes them taste like themselves. The happy ones taste too sweet. It makes me sick. Their warmth clings to me for days, coating my throat and making me dream of birthday candles and clean baby blankets. I avoid them unless I am desperate. The grief-filled ones taste like cold smoke and deep water. They are filling, but they leave me heavy and slow. I have eaten grief before, and each time I wondered if I would sink through the floor and never rise again. The cruel ones are best. They burn going down. They fight. They snap and spark. They leave my hands shaking and my thoughts bright for hours. After them, I can see better, hear better, walk all night without needing rest. Their fear at the end has a clean, electric edge to it. I know that sounds monstrous. I did tell you I was not a hero. The ad tonight was short, simple, almost boring. A pair of baby shoes, never worn, free to anyone who needs them, pick up only. There was a picture too, tiny white shoes on a stained kitchen counter. Not new enough to be a real gift, not old enough to be saved from a grown child. The laces were still tucked inside. The soles had no marks. Behind them, just out of focus, I saw a hand. Large, red at the knuckles. A man's hand. Though the profile name belonged to a woman. That was interesting. I answered from a fresh account. I always keep fresh accounts. A young mother's name, a gentle profile picture, a few copied posts about diapers and sleepless nights. Enough to look real if someone glanced quickly. Not enough to invite conversation. The reply came within 2 minutes. Yes, still available. Can you come tonight? Of course they wanted tonight. They always do. The house was on a quiet street near the edge of town where the homes were close enough for neighbors to hear shouting, but far enough apart for them to pretend they did not. The porch light was on when I arrived. A small, warm circle in the dark. There was a minivan in the driveway with a dented bumper and a sticker on the back window that said, "Family First." I stood on the porch and breathed in. The smell came through the door before anyone opened it. Not the smell of food or dirty laundry or baby powder. The real smell. The color smell. The shape of the person inside. Spicy. Very spicy. Rage leaked through the cracks around the door. It came out in red-orange pulses, hot and proud. Beneath it was self-importance, thick and yellow like old grease. There was also excitement. Not the bright kind, the secret kind. The kind that grows in people who think they are smarter than everyone else. I rang the bell. My blood moved faster as I waited. It always does at this part. The hunger lifts its head. My mouth fills with heat. My fingers feel light. For a second, I'm almost happy. Footsteps approached from inside. Heavy, slow, confident. A lock clicked. Then another. The door opened halfway. The person who looked out was not the woman from the profile picture. Of course not. He was in his late 40s, maybe early 50s. Broad through the shoulders, with thinning hair and small eyes that moved over me too quickly. He wore a soft smile, but the colors around him were sharp enough to cut. His smile did not reach his eyes. It did not even try. "You here for the shoes?" he asked. I made myself look smaller. It is not hard. People see what they expect to see, and he expected someone nervous, grateful, maybe poor, someone who would step inside because a man told her to. "Yes," I said. "Thank you so much. I really appreciate it." His colors flared. He liked that. Gratitude, need, power. "No problem," he said. "Always good to help someone who actually needs it." There it was. The first taste of him. Sharp and ugly. He was helping a poor person, teaching a lesson, being good. So good. The kind of good that needs an audience. The kind of good that keeps score. He opened the door wider. "Step inside for a second. I'll grab him." I looked past him. The hallway was dim. A staircase climbed on the left. A living room sat to the right, cluttered and dark. Somewhere deeper in the house, A television played quietly. The air was warm, but not welcoming. It had the close smell of rooms where windows are rarely open. I hesitated because he wanted me to hesitate. He wanted to enjoy the moment when I chose to ignore my instincts. "Just for a second," he said. I stepped inside. He closed the door behind me. There is always a sound when a trap closes. Sometimes it is a lock. Sometimes it is a breath. Sometimes it is the silence after someone realizes they made a mistake. Tonight, it was the soft click of the deadbolt. He turned away, still pretending. "Shoes are in the kitchen." I followed him down the hall. There were no baby things in the house. No toys, no bottles, no blankets, no framed pictures of children. On the wall were family photos, but the faces in them had been turned toward the wall or scratched away with something sharp. That was not necessary. That was personal. The spicy ones are often careless, but this one was not. He had planned the story, at least the outside of it. Free shoes, kind stranger, quick pickup. Maybe he had used it before, maybe not. His color suggested he had thought about it for a long time. In the kitchen, the tiny white shoes sat on the table. They looked even smaller in person. He stood beside them and picked one up. "Cute, right?" he said. "Yes," I said. He watched my face. "You got a kid?" I gave him the answer he wanted. "Not yet. Soon." His smile changed. There are moments when people show what they are. Most of them do not notice. They think the mask is still in place, but the colors always tell the truth. His flared red and black, excited now, hungry in his own way. "Must be hard," he said, "needing help from strangers." I looked at the shoes. "Yes," I said softly. "It must be." He came closer. The kitchen light buzzed above us. Outside, a car passed, its headlights sliding across the window and then disappearing. The house settled around us. He thought he was alone with something weak. That was his mistake. Turnabout. It is fair play. I let him reach for my arm. I let his fingers close around my wrist. I let him feel the moment of control he had been waiting for since he posted the ad. Then I looked up at him properly. Not with the face he expected, not with the eyes I wear in public, with the other ones. His colors snapped inward like a flame pulled into a jar. For one beautiful second, he understood that the trap had worked perfectly, but not for him. He tried to let go. I did not let him. I will not describe everything that happened next. Not because I am ashamed, but because people always focus on the wrong parts. They want blood, they want screams, they want teeth and claws and the shape of the body after. That is not the important part. The important part was the taste. He was all heat at first. Rage, pride, old cruelty, dirty joy. It burned my throat and filled my chest. Underneath it, there was fear, sudden and bright, much cleaner than the rest of him. He had spent years making other people afraid, and he had never understood how pure fear could be when it finally belonged to him. I drank until the colors went out. When it was over, the kitchen was quiet. The little white shoes sat on the table, untouched. I washed my hands in his sink. I took the shoes because leaving them there felt rude. I opened the back door and let the cold night air into the house. For a few seconds, I stood there breathing, full and steady for the first time in days. The world felt sharper. The stars above the yard looked close enough to touch. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked once and then stopped. I left through the front door. I did not lock it behind me. My phone buzzed as I reached the sidewalk. A new Google alert. I looked down at the screen. Another ad had been posted 3 towns over. Baby shoes. Never worn. I smiled. tucked the tiny white shoes into my bag, and started walking. Story 3. Since I told my story, my doctor has put me on a higher dose of Prozac. I do not open the blinds in my bedroom anymore, especially the window that faces Harold and Bianca's house. I used to open them in the morning without thinking, just to let in a little light. But now I cannot do it. Even if the room feels dark and stuffy, I would rather sit in the dim light than risk seeing something staring back at me from across the yard. Zoe still will not stop pooping in my garden. I know it is her because I see her from my living room window. She sits there in the grass with that strange little cat body, staring at me like she knows exactly what she is doing. It is not normal cat staring either. Cats stare, sure. They are weird animals. But Zoe looks at me like a person hiding inside a cat. She keeps eye contact for way too long. I'm not even sure she blinks. Most of the time, I try to look away first because the whole thing makes my skin crawl, but every time I do, she starts meowing loudly until I look at her again. It makes me feel gross. I cannot explain it better than that. It feels like I am being watched by something that knows things about me it should not know. Job recently had his 9th birthday, and I was invited. Actually, the whole neighborhood was invited. That is how Harold and Bianca do things. They act like the most cheerful suburban couple in the world, even while being the least normal people I have ever met. By then, things were not exactly awkward between us anymore. Harold and Bianca had gone back to acting sweet and friendly, like nothing strange had ever happened. Of course, their version of normal still had a strong smell of nightmare on it, but that was expected at this point. I decided to go because saying no felt somehow worse than going. I did not want to offend them. I also did not want to give them any reason to focus on me more than they already did. So I bought Job a gift, wrapped it, and prepared myself for the long journey from my house to theirs. And by long journey, I mean about 30 or 40 steps across the neighborhood. Still, as I walked toward their backyard, I had what I can only describe as emotional war flashbacks. Every step felt heavier than it should have. I could see the fence. I could see the side of their house. I could see the backyard where, only a short time ago, I had seen things that still made me question whether I was a reliable witness to my own life. Before I could fully prepare myself, Bianca appeared. I do not mean she walked up to me. I mean she seemed to pop out of nowhere, like someone had turned her on. One second, the yard was empty, and the next, she was right in front of me with both hands over mine, gripping the gift box I was holding. "Oh, Tracy, I'm so glad you could celebrate Job with us," she said. Her voice was bright and cheerful, but her hands felt wrong. The best way I can describe it is this. It felt like someone had placed a random pair of leather gloves over my hands. There was no warmth, no real weight, just dry pressure. She took the gift box from me and led me toward a long table set up in the yard. There were about 20 chairs around it. I sat down in one of them while Bianca carried the gift toward the house. I want to be clear. The box was not heavy. It was a skateboard. I know because I bought it. It was light enough that a child could carry it. But Bianca carried it like she was moving a pair of heavy dumbbells. She hunched forward and gripped the box with both hands. Her steps were strange and thin, like her body had not fully decided how walking worked. The only image that came to my mind as I watched her move toward the sliding glass door was a swing set walking on stilts. Then she reached the glass door and began slamming her face against it. For one horrible second, I thought I was watching a horror movie scene happen in real life. Her face hit the glass again and again, violently, with flat smacking sounds. It was somehow louder than it should have been, like someone hitting a window with a wet purse. I sat there frozen, thinking, well, this is it. This is finally the moment where everyone else sees what I have been dealing with. But no. It turned out she was just trying to get Harold's attention because her hands were full. Harold rushed over from somewhere inside the house and opened the sliding glass door for her. "Sorry, honey," he said. "I was just grabbing Pappy." Bianca trudged past him into the house with the gift box, still carrying it like it might crush her. Harold stepped outside, and that was when I noticed he was holding something under one arm and a pillow in his other hand. At first I thought the thing under his arm was a large white ball. Then he got closer. It was not a ball. It was an eyeball. A huge eyeball. It turned slowly under Harold's arm and looked directly at me. The eye was milky and pale, but there were still faint hints of blue in it, like it had once been bright before age, death, or whatever else had happened to it. Then it blinked. It had crusty eyelids that seemed to emerge from nowhere, folding over the surface in a way that should not have been possible. I was so focused on the eye that I did not realize Harold had walked right up to me. "Oh, I see you've met Pappy," he said cheerfully. "Don't call him that, though. He's only okay with family calling him that." He walked past me and placed the pillow on the ground in a clear, open space in the backyard. Then he carefully set the giant eyeball on top of it. He positioned it at an angle so it could face the yard like a guest of honor. I stared at it for a long second. "What should I call him then?" I asked, because apparently my brain had given up on survival and started choosing dialogue options at random. "Well," Harold said, putting his hands on his hips, "history knows him as Zenith the Warmonger, but you can just call him the Ancient One." At that point, I honestly wondered why I even bothered asking questions. The answers always made things worse. It was like living in a haunted house that wrote its own punchlines. "What is the Ancient One doing here?" I asked. "Oh, well, you know," Harold said casually. "Every blood member of my family, which means me and Job, has to demonstrate a variety of skills to Pappy on our birthday every year to prove we are worth keeping alive. If we fail, Pappy will smite us." He said this like he was explaining why they always serve potato salad at cookouts. "That is indeed something I now know happens," I said. In that moment, I wished I had never stopped drinking. I really did. I would rather have been back in my worst habits, making terrible decisions and waking up with shame in my mouth, than sitting in a backyard while a skinless man explained eyeball family law to me. "What happens if he is not impressed?" I asked, trying to sound like I was joking. The mood changed so fast, it felt like the air had been sucked out of the yard. Harold looked down at me, and for the first time since I had known him, his face looked truly afraid. Not silly, not strange, afraid. A wave of cold, heavy energy seemed to roll off him and over the table. "Never say that again," he said. His voice was sharp and firm, but there was something anxious underneath it, something close to panic. I recoiled and lifted both hands without meaning to, like someone had pointed a gun at me. Then, just as quickly as it had come, his cheerful mask returned. He blinked, noticed my reaction, and softened. "I'm sorry, Tracy," he said. "I'm just a little more stressed than usual. I just want Job to have a good day and make Pappy proud. There was sadness under his forced smile. Real sadness. And that made everything worse because for one tiny second, I almost felt bad for him. Soon, other guests started arriving. The neighborhood slowly filled their backyard. People came carrying cards, small gifts, containers of side dishes, and the kind of polite smiles people wear when they are trying not to admit that the host has placed a giant living eyeball on a pillow in the yard. My favorite neighbors, David and Joe, showed up too. They live directly across from my house, and they are genuinely wonderful people. David is warm and talkative, the kind of man who makes every conversation feel easier. Joe is quieter, but kind in a steady way. They are also loving fathers to Rosemarie, who is Job's classmate and best friend. Seeing them was a relief. "Hi, Trace," David called as he walked toward me with his arms open. I stood up, and we hugged. For a second, I felt like I was standing near someone from the normal world again. Then David leaned back and nodded toward the pillow in the yard. "You see the ancient one?" I asked quietly. David sighed. "First birthday party?" "Yes. I've seen this for maybe 3 birthdays now," he said. "Maybe 4. I don't know anymore. I don't want my kid to be judgmental, but it is a giant eyeball thing." "That is what I have been saying," I whispered intensely. We sat beside each other and watched Job and Rosemarie playing in the yard with Sparky. "Where's Joe?" I asked. "He's with Bianca," David said. "I made him help her with the rest of the party stuff. She's sweet, but she needs to work on her upper body strength." "Well, that's really nice of you guys. It's the least we can do for the parents of Rosemarie's best friend." We both looked back toward the kids. Sparky was squaring up with Job like they were in a boxing match. He threw wild punches at Job's skull until it flew off his neck and bounced into the grass. Rosemarie calmly picked up Job's skull and placed it back on his neck. Then Sparky knocked it off again. This repeated several times. It was disturbing, obviously, but also kind of fascinating. Sparky was really putting power behind those punches. I had not realized he was a southpaw. I made a quiet mental note, never to fight the man-dog thing under any circumstances. About 30 more minutes passed before everyone was seated at the long table. Bianca brought out dinner. Dinner was boiled eels stuffed with mayonnaise and radishes. I stared down at the plate in front of me and felt my soul try to leave my body. The eel looked wet, pale, and personal. The mayonnaise oozed out of the middle, and the radishes were sticking out at odd angles like little red warnings. I lied and said I was allergic to eel. Bianca did not question it. She disappeared and came back with a can of baked beans for me instead. I have never been so grateful for canned beans in my life. It turned out that many other people were also suddenly allergic to eel. The few guests who claimed they were not allergic and tried to eat it started throwing up within minutes. Harold, Job, and Bianca, however, ate the entire thing with joy. They scarfed it down like it was the best meal they had ever had. After dinner, Job walked into the open space of the backyard to make an announcement. He stood in front of everyone, small and bony, with the nervous energy of a kid who wanted to do well. "Hello, everyone," he said. "I'm Job. Today I will do some cool stuff. Watch this." He started with somersaults and cartwheels. To be fair, he was pretty good at them. Then he transitioned into a choreographed dance to Numb by Linkin Park, which was not what I expected from a child's birthday performance, but at this point nothing really surprised me for more than 3 seconds. After the dance, he performed several other acts. He took off his own head and held it under one arm while reciting a random paragraph from Shakespeare. His voice was a little muffled because, again, his head was not attached to his body, but the delivery had confidence. Then he played Hot Cross Buns on a recorder. After that, Sparky beat him up again, knocking him into pieces while Rosemarie helped rebuild him like a Lego character. The whole thing was somehow cute, sad, impressive, and deeply disturbing at the same time. When job finished, I saw Harold and Bianca turn their heads toward the Ancient One at the exact same time. It happened so quickly and sharply that it looked rehearsed. I followed their gaze. The giant eyeball began to vibrate. At first, it was just a small tremble. Then the whole thing shook harder. A wet line opened down the center of the eye, and it split apart like a Venus flytrap. Inside was not light or magic or anything clean. It was a mound of wet red flesh, sloppy and raw, cradled by the open halves of the eye. Everyone went silent. Job walked up to it like this was completely normal. He reached both hands into the mess and started searching around inside. The sound was horrible, wet and thick. I looked away for a second, then looked back because apparently I hate myself. After a moment, Job smiled. He pulled out a $100 bill in one hand and a handful of Jolly Ranchers in the other. "Pappy approves! Pappy approves!" he shouted with joy. He held the gifts above his head like a champion and ran toward Harold and Bianca. Harold and Bianca jumped up from their seats and met him halfway. They wrapped him in a tight hug. For one brief moment, despite the giant split eyeball and the pile of flesh on the lawn, it was actually kind of sweet. They loved him. That much was clear. Harold, Bianca, and Job were not a normal family by any definition I understood, but the love between them was real. I could not hear exactly what they whispered to him, but I heard Job's happy little giggles. That told me enough. Even if the family was made up of a skinless man, a strange hollow woman, and a skeleton child, they had something a lot of families did not. They cared about each other openly. They celebrated each other. They were proud of each other. I know what it looks like when a family cannot do that. Then the sweetness ended, because of course it did. "Oh, honey," Bianca said, gesturing toward the eyeball. "Don't forget." Harold looked at her with affection. "Bianca, what would I do without you?" He gave her a wet, bloody kiss on the cheek, then walked over to the split eyeball. He picked it up off the pillow and let the mound of flesh slide onto the ground with a thick slap. He hummed happily as he carried the opened eye back toward his wife and child. What happened next is the kind of thing that probably pays for a therapist's vacation home. Harold bit into one of the eyeball halves. He chewed quickly and loudly. Job stood in front of him and opened his mouth wide. "Ah," Job said. I realized what was about to happen a second before it happened. Harold was going to chew the eyeball and spit it into Job's mouth. And before I could see it, something grabbed my arm and yanked me sharply away from the scene. It was Joe. He had been sitting across from me, and he pulled me around so I was facing away. I am grateful he did. His grip was so tight that it left bruises on my arm later, but I know he did not mean to hurt me. I could tell because he was using his other hand to block his own vision, too. Joe is a naturally quiet man. He is not rude or antisocial. He just believes in actions more than words. That day proved it. His whole body was tense with discomfort, but he did not say anything. He just made sure I did not have to watch. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw David also turned away. He had a flask and was drinking from it like a man trying to erase a memory before it fully formed. We stayed like that for 20 long, awful minutes. The only sounds behind us were Harold biting into the eyeball like it was an apple, chewing with wet smacks, and then spitting into Job's mouth, over and over again. Crunch, chew, smack, spit. I stared at the table in front of me and tried to think about anything else. I thought about the canned beans. I thought about my bath mat at home. I thought about taxes. Nothing worked. Every sound painted a picture in my mind, and my imagination was almost worse than seeing it. Finally, the sound stopped. There was a moment of silence. Then small footsteps came closer, and I felt a tug on my shirt. "Tracy, Tracy, look!" Jabe said excitedly. I turned slowly. Job now had eyes in his empty sockets. They were icy blue. I did not know what was worse: the fact that they looked exactly like Harold's eyes, or the fact that Job could blink despite having no skin. His new eyelids moved over the eyes smoothly, like they had always belonged there. "Wow," I said, forcing every bit of enthusiasm I had into my voice. "That's cool, buddy." I smiled so hard my jaw hurt the next day. "It's party time." "Woo!" Job shouted. Then he ran off somewhere else in the yard. After that, the birthday party went on like a normal birthday party. Somehow, that made it even stranger. Job opened cards and presents. There was cake, which was store-bought, thank God. People played yard games. A few guests talked too loudly to prove they were not thinking about what had just happened. Others avoided looking at the red mound still sitting on the grass. I played horseshoes for a while, mostly because standing still made me feel like I might start screaming. During the game, I noticed Sparky and Zoe near the flesh mound. Zoe was actually eating it, taking small bites like it was the best meal she had ever had. Sparky, on the other hand, was just shoving pieces into his mask-like face. Most of it did not seem to go anywhere. It smeared across the front of him, leaving a huge stain while pieces of crushed flesh fell back onto the ground. Job loved the skateboard I got him. He ran up to me with it in both hands and started talking fast about how he could ride it while Sparky pulled him. He seemed truly excited. Then he hugged me. I did not expect that. His little arms wrapped around me, and for 1 second, he was just a happy kid at his birthday party. A weird kid, yes. A skeleton kid with new, stolen, or inherited, or spiritually transferred blue eyes, yes. But still a kid. Then he ran over to Sparky to show him the skateboard. Sparky looked up, gave him a thumbs up, and went back to mashing red flesh into his face. A couple of hours later, the party finally ended. I have never tried to speed walk so subtly in my life. I did not want to look rude, but I wanted to get away from that house more than I wanted anything. I said polite goodbyes. I smiled. I thanked Bianca for inviting me. I wished Job happy birthday one more time. Then I walked back to my house as quickly as I could without breaking into a full sprint. The moment I got inside, I locked the door. Then I checked the lock. Then I checked it again. I spent the rest of the night trying to calm myself down. I took a bath. I watched cartoons. I tried meditation. I made tea. I played soft music. I did every healthy coping strategy people recommend when they do not understand that your neighbor's family just fed a giant, ancient eyeball to their skeleton child in the backyard. None of it helped. When I finally went to sleep, the Ancient One appeared in my dreams. He was rolling around on the ground in circles, speaking to me in French with a deep, distorted voice. I do not speak French, but in the dream I understood every word and none of it at the same time. His voice sounded like it was coming from under the earth and inside my own skull. I know Prozac can give you vivid dreams. I have read that. My doctor warned me. But this felt too specific to blame only on medication. I have had strange dreams before. This was different. This felt like something had found a way in. I do not know how to feel right now. I do not know what Harold and Bianca really are. I do not know what Job is becoming. I do not know what Zoe wants from me. I do not know if the Ancient One is actually some family elder, an old god, a curse, or just another impossible thing that decided to move into my neighborhood and attend children's birthday parties. I will update again if anything else happens. For now, I just wish Zoe would stop clawing at my front door every night. Story 4. Locked inside my study, I sat in front of my typewriter with a lit cigarette between my fingers. Smoke curled up toward the ceiling in thin gray lines, twisting and fading before it could reach the dark wooden beams above me. The room smelled of old paper, stale tobacco, whiskey, and failure. That smell had become part of the house over the past year, just like the creaking floorboards and the cold drafts that slipped in under the doors. The typewriter sat on my desk like a judge waiting for me to speak. A clean white page rested in its carriage, perfectly still, perfectly blank. It had been there for a long time, too long. At first I used to see that blank page as a beginning, a fresh chance, an open door. Now it looked more like a quiet insult. Every time I sat down in front of it, it reminded me that I had nothing to say, or worse, that I had something to say but no talent to say it. I took a drag from my cigarette and stared at the page until my eyes began to burn. Then I looked to the side, toward the bookcase I had bought when we first moved into the house. I had told Sandy I would fill it with my own books one day. Not just books I liked, not just stories by better men, but stories with my name on the spine. I had imagined standing there with my son, Duncan, when he was older, pointing to each one and telling him where the ideas came from. I imagined him being proud of me. I imagined Sandy smiling from the doorway, pretending she had always believed I could do it, even in the years when I could not believe it myself. But there were no books on that shelf. Not one. Instead, it held 2 bottles of whiskey, one nearly empty and the other waiting its turn. There was a small box of shotgun shells, my silver Zippo lighter, and the double-barreled shotgun Pops had given me as a housewarming gift. He had said every man needed a way to protect his home. I had laughed at him back then. I told him I was a writer, not a hunter. But he had only shrugged and said the world did not care what a man called himself when trouble came knocking. The cigarette burned close to my fingers. I crushed it into the ashtray and stood up. My chair scraped loudly against the floor, and I winced at the sound, glancing toward the door as if I had done something wrong. The house was quiet. Too quiet, maybe. The kind of quiet that only exists late at night when everyone else is sleeping, and your own thoughts become louder than anything outside. I stepped out of the study and into the hallway. The floorboards groaned under my weight, so I tried to walk softly. At the far end of the hallway was the bedroom Sandy and I shared. On the right side, another corridor led toward the kitchen and Duncan's room. I went first to our bedroom. I opened the door only a little and looked inside. Sandy was asleep on our queen-sized mattress, wrapped tightly in the quilt blanket her mother had made for us when we married. She wore her pink nightgown, the one with lace on the sleeves, and her black hair was spread messily across her face. She snored softly, not loud enough to be annoying, just loud enough to make the room feel alive. Her eyelids fluttered now and then like she was dreaming. I stood there for a few seconds watching her. I did not know why. Maybe I wanted to remind myself that at least one thing in my life was still real, still mine, still safe. I closed the door slowly and stepped back into the hallway. Then I turned toward the other corridor. I passed the kitchen, where the sink was full of dishes I'd promised to wash earlier, and stopped in front of Duncan's room. His door was closed, but not all the way. A thin line of darkness showed along the frame. I smiled a little, expecting to see my boy sleeping with one leg kicked out of the blanket. Maybe with a toy soldier or a wooden train still clutched in his hand. He had a habit of fighting sleep until it beat him. I pushed the door open and looked inside. His bed was empty. For 1 second, my mind did not understand what I was seeing. The blanket was pushed down. The pillow had the shape of his head pressed into it. The room smelled like him, like soap and grass and the little boy's sweat that stuck to him after running around outside all day. But he was not there. Then I saw the window. It was open. Cold night air poured into the room, making the curtains lift and fall like slow breathing. My heart started beating so hard it seemed to shake my whole body. I crossed the room in 2 steps and shoved my head out the window. At first, all I saw was the back lawn, pale under the moonlight and the dark line of woods beyond the property. Then something moved near the tree line. A figure. It was tall and skinny. Too skinny, almost like a person made of bones and stretched skin. Its body was pale white, so pale it seemed to glow faintly in the dark. It was carrying something in its arms. No. Someone. Duncan. My son's small body hung limp against the thing's chest, his arms dangling, his head tilted to one side. "Duncan," I screamed. The sound tore out of me before I could stop it. I threw one leg over the windowsill and lunged outside, landing hard in the wet grass. I did not feel the pain. I only ran. My bare feet slapped against the ground as I sprinted after them, trying to close the distance. Branches scratched my arms. Mud splashed up my legs. I kept my eyes on the pale figure as it moved toward the woods. It was fast. Too fast. It did not run like a man. It seemed to glide between steps, bending in strange places, moving with a smoothness that made my stomach turn. Just before it reached the trees, it looked back. I saw its face. There was no proper mouth, no lips, no teeth, only a wide red smile stretching across its pale face, wet and empty and wrong. It smiled at me like it knew I could not catch it. Then it slipped into the woods with my son. A few seconds later, I crashed through the shrubs where it had vanished. Thorns tore at my skin. Branches jabbed my chest and face. I shouted Duncan's name again and again until my throat burned. But the woods gave me nothing back except darkness and the rustle of leaves. I searched until my legs gave out. I searched until Sandy found me on my knees near the tree line, screaming into the trees like a madman. The next few weeks became a blur of fear, noise, and waiting. We made as many posters as we could. Sandy wrote Duncan's name by hand on some of them because the printer ran out of ink. I walked through town putting them on telephone poles, store windows, church boards, gas station doors, anywhere people might look. His school pictures stared out from every corner of town. Missing. Please help. Last seen at home. Age 8. Brown eyes, brown hair. Loved toy rockets and adventure stories. The police came. At first they asked questions in soft voices. Then, after I told them what I had seen, their eyes changed. They still wrote things down. They still nodded. But I knew that look. It was the look people give a drunk man when he tells them the devil came through his window. They sent search parties into the woods. Men with dogs, men with flashlights. Volunteers from town, neighbors who brought coffee and blankets and said sorry until the word meant nothing. I went with every group they allowed me to join. I called Duncan's name until my voice turned rough and useless. Sandy waited at home most of the time beside the phone, as if Duncan might call and ask to be picked up. For a while, I held on to hope. I had to. Hope was cruel, but it was all I had. I told myself maybe Duncan had gotten away. Maybe he was hiding somewhere. Maybe he had crawled into some shed or found a road. Maybe the thing had dropped him. Maybe someone would find him alive. Then yesterday, they found what was left. I did not see everything. They tried to stop me, and maybe that was mercy. But I saw enough. Torn clothes, a shoe, pieces of fabric from his pajamas, meat, bone, small bones, small enough that no father should ever have to understand what he is looking at. That was when hope died. My son was dead. My poor boy was dead, and not in any gentle way. Not lost. Not sleeping under some tree. Dead in the woods, torn apart, and I had failed him. If I had been faster, if I had jumped out the window sooner, if I had not stopped to stare at the typewriter, if I had not been drinking that night, maybe I could have saved him. Maybe I could have grabbed him before that thing reached the trees. Maybe everything would have been different. Now I sat on the foot of our bed, staring at the floor, while Sandy wrapped her arms around me from behind, her face pressed against my back. I could feel her breath through my shirt. "Honey, please," she whispered. Her voice was weak from crying. "Just be honest with me." I did not answer. "I'm not saying it's your fault," she said. "I just want to know what really happened that night." I closed my eyes. My hands curled into fists on my knees. "For the 100th time," I said through gritted teeth, "something with pale white skin carried him into the woods." Her arms tightened around me. She did not pull away. "I believe that you saw something." "No, you don't." "I do, but..." She hesitated, and that pause made my blood heat. "You had a lot to drink before I went to bed that night." I pushed her arms off me and stood up. "Oh my God. This again?" "Please don't shout." "I told you I have it under control," I snapped. "I am not like my father. Do you hear me? I know what I saw. No animal took our son. No man took him. It was a goddamn monster." Sandy flinched at the word, but she did not leave. "I didn't say you lied." "That's exactly what you're saying." "No. I'm saying you were scared and tired and drinking, and maybe..." A hard knock came at the front door. We both froze. The house went silent around us. Another knock. I turned toward the bedroom door. "Who the hell is that at this hour? I told the police to leave us alone already." I stormed out before Sandy could stop me. My heavy steps made the old floor creak all the way down the hall. Anger carried me faster than caution. I reached the front door, grabbed the handle, and yanked it open. Whatever words I had ready died in my throat. A child stood on the porch, naked, covered in mud, dead leaves, and scratches. Thin arms hanging at his sides, wet hair stuck to his forehead. Duncan. For a second, I could not move. I could not breathe. My mind split in two. One half screamed that it was impossible. The other half wanted to fall to the floor and thank God. "Duncan!" Sandy screamed behind me. She rushed past me and dropped to her knees, wrapping her arms around him. She cried so hard her whole body shook. She pulled him against her chest and kissed the top of his muddy head again and again. I stood there like a statue, staring at him. It looked like him. His face, his hair, his small shoulders, his hands. But something was wrong. I could not say what it was yet. Maybe it was the way he stood too still. Maybe it was the way his eyes seemed empty. Maybe it was the fact that I had seen pieces of my son pulled from the woods the day before. Sandy pulled him inside and shut the door. We took him straight to the bathroom. Sandy filled the tub with warm water while I stood in the doorway watching. She lowered him into the water and washed mud from his arms, legs, back, and face. Leaves and dirt floated on the surface. He did not complain when the water touched cuts on his skin. He did not shiver. He only sat there, staring ahead. "I'm so happy you're okay," Sandy kept saying. "My baby. My sweet baby." She kissed his head at least a dozen times after drying him with a towel. When she was done, I lifted him from the tub. He felt heavier than I remembered. Not just a little heavier either. It was like something dense had been packed inside him. I had carried Duncan many times before. When he fell asleep on the sofa, when he scraped his knee, when he begged to ride on my shoulders. I knew the weight of my son. This was not it. Still, I carried him to his room and laid him on the bed. Sandy knelt beside him, bringing herself to eye level. "Can you tell us what happened out there?" she asked gently. "We were so worried." He looked at her. His mouth opened a little. He paused like he was feeling the words before using them. "Duncan." Sandy smiled through tears. "Yes, honey. You are Duncan." "I'm Duncan," he repeated. "Do you remember us?" she asked. She pointed to herself. "I'm Mama." And then she pointed at me. "And that's Papa. We're your parents." His eyes shifted from her to me. For a moment, they were flat and dark. Then he blinked. "Yes," he said slowly. "Mama, Papa, I remember you." Each word came out better than the last, but they still sounded wrong, like someone learning a language by copying sounds. Sandy stood and took my hand. "Everything's going to be okay, honey. You need rest now." She led me out and closed the door behind us. Over the next week, Duncan slowly learned how to live in our house again. That was the only way I could describe it. Learned. Not remembered. Learned. He did not know how to open doors at first. He stood in front of them waiting until Sandy showed him how to turn the knob. He held forks awkwardly, gripping them in his fists like sticks. He stared at the toilet as if it were some strange machine. He forgot where his room was, where the kitchen was, where his toys were kept. Sandy said trauma could do terrible things to a child's mind. I wanted to believe her. I really did. We called a doctor to the house. He spent nearly an hour in Duncan's room, checking his eyes, his pulse, his reflexes. He asked Duncan simple questions. "What is your name? How old are you? Who is the president? What color is this?" Duncan answered some and stared through others. When the doctor came out, he said Duncan was healthy. Too healthy, maybe. No broken bones, no serious infection, no signs of head injury. But he had one of the worst cases of memory loss the doctor had ever seen. Sandy cried when she heard it. I only stared at him. It made no sense. If Duncan had been dragged into the woods, where had he been all that time? If he had survived, why had the search dogs not found him? If those remains were not his, then whose were they? And if he had no head injury, where had his memories gone? The first real sign came the next morning. I went to wake him. I opened his door quietly and looked inside. He was already sitting up in bed. In his left hand, he held a pile of white teeth. My stomach dropped. They were small, wet, and clean. A dozen of them rested in his palm like little stones. He took one between the fingers of his other hand, brought it to his mouth, and pushed it into his gums. A soft, wet squelch filled the room. Blood ran down his wrist. I backed away without breathing. I went straight to our bedroom and shook Sandy awake. "What is it?" she mumbled. I pulled her out of bed and led her down the hall. By the time we reached Duncan's door, he was standing near his dresser, putting on clothes. He turned and looked at us. Then he smiled. Every tooth was in its place. Sandy sighed. "I know you're still happy he's back, and so am I, but it's early. I need a few more hours of sleep." She walked back to our room. I followed her and closed the door behind us, locking it with trembling fingers. Then I took her hand and made her sit on the bed. "Sandy," I said, "something is wrong with Duncan." Her face changed immediately. "Don't start. I don't know how to explain it, but I know something happened in those woods. I woke you because I saw him putting his teeth back in his mouth. They were all in his hand, Sandy. All of them. He pushed them back into his gums." She pulled her hand away from mine. "And the meat they found in the woods," I continued. "They didn't find teeth in it, did they?" Her face went pale. For 1 second, I thought I had reached her. Then her grief hardened into anger. "Why do you keep doing this?" she said. "Why do you keep making things up about our son?" "I'm not making anything up. I just saw him smile. His teeth were fine." "You don't understand what I saw." "No," she snapped. "You don't understand that our boy came back, and you are trying to turn him into another nightmare." She stormed out of the room. I lay back on the bed and stared at the ceiling. No. This was not only in my head. I knew what I had seen the night Duncan was taken. I knew what I saw in his room. There were the remains in the woods, his strange weight, his missing memories, and now his teeth. None of it fit unless the boy in our house was not truly our boy. But Sandy would never believe me unless I showed her. That night, I waited until she fell asleep, and her snoring filled the bedroom softly, the way it had before everything broke. I slipped out of bed and moved into the hallway. In my study, I went straight to the shelf. I grabbed the whiskey bottle, opened it, and took a heavy swallow. The burn helped steady my hands, or at least I told myself it did. Then I picked up the shotgun and slipped 2 shells into my pocket. I crept toward Duncan's door, the gun in my hands. I loaded both barrels as quietly as I could, then pushed the door open. He lay on his bed facing the wall. I stepped inside and raised the gun. My hands were steady now. My heart was not. Slowly, I moved around to the other side of the bed. His eyes were already open. He stared down the barrels of the shotgun, then lifted his gaze to me. "What are you?" I asked. His face remained calm. "Papa, you're not my son." He sat up slowly. "What do you mean? I'm Duncan. Don't you recognize me?" "Shut up." My voice cracked. I pressed the barrels against his forehead and pulled back both hammers. "You can't trick me anymore. I know what you are." He smiled. It spread across his face, too wide, almost from ear to ear. "Why can't you accept that I'm home?" he asked softly. "Why can't you just be happy?" "Because my son died in the woods 3 weeks ago." My finger pulled the trigger. The blast shook the room. The sound was huge and final. Blood and bone struck the wall behind him. The body fell sideways onto the bed, and blood began to spread where his head had been. The door burst open. Sandy ran in and stopped so suddenly she almost fell. Her eyes went from the shotgun in my hands to the body on the bed. Then she screamed. It was not a human sound. It was pain given a voice. She rushed to the bed and grabbed what was left of him, sobbing into his blood-soaked shirt. Her pink nightgown turned dark red where she held him. "What have you done?" she screamed at me. What have you done to my baby? You monster! I dropped the shotgun. But he isn't, I whispered. He isn't. My back hit the wall. The room spun. This could not be wrong. I knew it could not be wrong. I had not killed my child. I had killed the thing wearing him. I had to have. Then Sandy collapsed. She hit the floor with a heavy thud. I ran to her, calling her name. My fingers found her pulse. Bum-bum. Bum-bum. Still alive. Thank God. I lifted her and carried her out of the room, down the hallway, and into our bedroom. I laid her on the bed and pulled the blanket over her chest. She was breathing. She was safe. For the moment. Then I heard something from down the hall. Wet sounds. Crunching. The soft snap of bone. The squish of meat being moved by something hidden inside it. And beneath it all, something else. Laughter. Muffled laughter. I walked back slowly. Each step felt like it took a year. The sound grew louder as I reached Duncan's door. I looked inside. The body on the bed twitched. Its arms jerked. Its legs kicked once, then bent at strange angles. Thick red liquid poured from the ruined neck. Something pushed up through the opening where the head had been. It was covered in meat and blood, slick and shining. First came a skull-like shape. Then 2 deep eye sockets open, holding black eyes with no light in them. There was only a hole where the nose should have been. Then came the smile. No teeth. Just a wide, gummy red smile stretching from one side of the face to the other. It saw me in the doorway. In a deep, wet voice, it croaked, "Papa, everything's going to be okay." I wanted to run. I wanted to grab the shotgun. I wanted to burn the room down. But my body would not move. I watched as Duncan's limbs stretched longer. The skin tore as the bones inside pushed outward, pulling him into a shape no child could ever have. His arms grew too long. His legs unfolded like broken tools. The skin stretched thin, ripping in lines as the creature stood. By the time I could move again, it was beside the window, wearing my son's skin like clothes that did not fit. "What the hell are you?" I screamed. I slammed the door shut. Wood cracked above me. The creature shoved its head through the door, splintering the wood as if it were paper. It looked down at me with that toothless smile. I let go and ran. I did not get far. It burst through the door behind me and grabbed my leg. I fell hard, my head slamming against the wooden floor. Warm blood ran down my forehead and into my eye. My vision flickered. I looked back and saw it standing over me, tall and pale inside torn skin, its black eyes staring into mine. Then everything went dark. When I woke up, I was still on the floor between Duncan's room and the hallway corner. My head throbbed. My whole body screamed with pain. I dragged myself up using the wall and stumbled toward the bedroom. The door was closed. I had not left it closed. I pounded my fist against it. "Sandy!" From inside, her voice answered, light and calm. "Hold on, honey. I'm changing." My blood turned to ice. "I don't care," I shouted. "Open the door." I threw my shoulder into it, once, twice. On the third hit, the door gave way, and I stumbled inside. The bed was covered in pieces of her. Organs, meat, snapped bones, and strips of skin were scattered across the sheets like someone had emptied a butcher's bucket over the place where my wife had slept. And on the far side of the bed stood the creature. Its lower half was already inside her skin. It pushed its feet down first, then pulled the flesh higher, like a jumpsuit. Its bones bent and folded with sickening cracks, so it could fit into her smaller shape. It turned its half-formed face toward me. "I love you, honey," it said in Sandy's voice. Something broke inside me then. Maybe it was grief. Maybe it was sanity. Maybe it had been broken long before, and I had only just heard the sound. I laughed. I laughed harder than I had ever laughed in my life. I laughed until tears ran down my face. Then I turned and limped out of the room. In my study, I grabbed the whiskey bottle and my lighter. When I stepped back into the hall, the creature stood in the bedroom doorway, almost fully wearing my wife now. "Come back to bed," it said in her voice. "We can talk about this tomorrow." I lifted the bottle and took one last drink. Then I screwed the cap back on, drew back my arm, and threw it as hard as I could. The bottle shattered against the creature's body, soaking it in whiskey. I flicked my lighter open. The small flame danced in front of me. The creature's smile faded. I threw the lighter. Fire rushed up its body in an instant. It screamed, a high, terrible bellow that shook the hallway and stabbed into my ears. Flames spread along the walls, across the old wood, into the rooms that had once held my life. The creature flailed and fell backward, still screaming in Sandy's voice, then Duncan's, then something deeper underneath both. I covered my ears and staggered toward the front door. Smoke filled my lungs. Heat bit at my back. I pushed the door open with my shoulder and fell outside onto the grass. Behind me, the house burned. I lay on my back and watched flames climb through the windows. I watched the roof catch. I watched the place where I had loved my wife and raised my son turn black and red against the night sky. I wept until there was nothing left in me. A few hours later, emergency services arrived. Firefighters put out what remained of the house. Paramedics loaded me into an ambulance. Police officers came to my hospital room and asked questions I did not want to answer. They found bullet holes in my son's room. They found a high amount of alcohol in my blood. They found the burned remains of my wife on the bed. They did not find a monster. Of course, they did not believe me. I could not even blame them. Who would? It is not every day a skin-stealing thing crawls out of your child and kills your family. In their version of the story, I was a drunk, failed writer who murdered his son, killed his wife, and burned down his house to hide it. I was found guilty. My lawyer argued insanity. And maybe that saved me from prison, though I do not think it saved me from anything that mattered. Instead of a cell, they sent me to an asylum. A white room, a narrow bed, men in uniforms, nurses with soft voices and careful eyes, pills that made the world slow and heavy. I spent my days waiting to die. Then I received a visitor. The staff tied me to the bed before letting him in. That should have told me something. They strapped my wrists down, then my ankles, tight enough that the leather bit into my skin. A nurse told me to stay calm. I laughed at her. The door opened. A man stepped inside wearing a doctor's coat. He moved with calm confidence, like he owned the room and everyone in it. He had soft blue eyes and a polite smile. He took off his hat as he came to my bedside. Then he placed the hat gently on my chest. "Do you recognize me?" he asked. I stared at him. "Never met you." "Why are you here?" His smile widened. "What a shame," he said. "I hoped you would. I've grown so much, and it is all thanks to you, Papa." He leaned closer. "Or should I say, honey?" My heart stopped. "It's you," I whispered. Then I began fighting the restraints. I pulled and twisted until the bed shook under me. "I'll kill you," I screamed. "I'll kill you for what you did." The door burst open and workers flooded in. They held my arms, my legs, my shoulders. I snapped my teeth at them like an animal. One of them pushed a needle into my arm. The sedative spread fast. My body went numb. My anger sank under thick black water. The room blurred at the edges. The last thing I saw before darkness took me was his ear-to-ear smile hanging above me, toothless and red behind a doctor's face. Story 5. You told me that writing down my experiences might help me control my urges. I still do not really understand how putting words on a page is supposed to quiet something that lives so deep inside me. But I am trying because you asked me to try. You said it might give my mind a place to put the thoughts before they grow too strong. You said it might help me look at them from the outside instead of letting them pull me under. I do not know if I believe that. I do not know if I believe much of anything you have told me, but I promised I would do the exercise, so here I am, sitting alone, writing everything down as honestly as I can. The craving started 5 months ago during a cave diving trip with my best friend. We had gone diving together many times before. It was our thing. The one part of life where everything felt simple. Down there, with the world muted around us, there were no bills, no deadlines, no families calling, no jobs to hate, no future to worry about. There was just the dark water, the beam of a flashlight, and the sound of our own breathing. He trusted me more than anyone else ever had, and I trusted him the same way. That is what makes this so hard to write. He was not some stranger. He was not a name in the news or a face in a crowd. He was my best friend. He knew the worst parts of me long before I did. That day, we made a bad decision. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was boredom. Maybe we were both too eager to feel like explorers instead of ordinary men with ordinary lives. We found a narrow path inside the cave system, one neither of us had seen before. It looked untouched, almost hidden, like the earth had been keeping its secret for years. We should have turned back. We both knew that. We had trained for situations like that, and we had repeated the rules to each other many times. Never enter unexplored areas. Never force your way forward. Never trust a cave just because it looks still. But he looked at me, and I looked at him, and without saying the words, we both agreed to go in. At first, it was exciting. Our lights moved over stone walls that sparkled with moisture. The passage was tight, but not impossible. We moved slowly, careful not to stir up too much silt or scrape our tanks too badly. I remember thinking we would have a great story to tell later. I remember imagining us laughing about it over beer, talking about how stupid and lucky we had been. Then the floor gave way beneath us. It happened so fast that I barely understood it. 1 second there was stone under us, and the next, everything dropped. Water, rock, mud, and our bodies all went down together. I remember the terrible grinding sound of stone breaking loose. I remember my shoulders slamming against something hard. I remember darkness spinning around me. When we finally stopped falling, we were trapped inside a small cavern, lower than the passage we had entered. The way back was blocked by broken rock and mud. Our lights still worked, but the beams shook in my hand because I could not stop trembling. The cavern was tiny, too tiny. The kind of space that makes your bones understand fear before your mind does. We had enough room to sit, maybe crawl a little, but not enough to stand properly. The air pocket was small, cold, and wet. Our bodies were pressed close together, partly because there was nowhere else to go, and partly because we needed warmth. The cold settled into us quickly. It crept through our suits and into our skin. It made our fingers stiff. It made our teeth chatter. It made every thought feel slower. At first, we believed rescue would come soon. We told each other that our entry point was marked, that people knew where we were, that we had not gone so far off the main route, that no one would find us. We said all the right things because we needed to hear them. We checked our supplies. We tried to stay calm. We rationed what little we had. We talked about how stupid we had been, then about how we would never take a risk like that again. We made jokes because silence felt too much like giving up. For a while, we talked about what we would do when we got out. I kept talking about the beach. I do not know why. I had not been to the beach in years, but in that cold, dark hole, it became the only thing I wanted. I imagined walking barefoot across the warm sand. I imagined sunlight on my face and salt water washing over my feet. I imagined air that moved, air that smelled like summer instead of wet stone and fear. He talked about food. That was always like him. Even when things were bad, he could make himself hungry just by describing a meal. He talked about a honey-glazed ribeye, thick and shining, cooked just right. He talked about a burger stacked with cheese, onions, sauce, and everything else he loved. He said when we got out, he was going to order enough food for 3 people and not apologize for a single bite. Those first conversations helped us pretend we were still ourselves. Then the hunger started changing us. At first, it was just an ache. Then it became a pressure. Then it became something bigger than pain. Hunger does not stay in the stomach the way people think it does. It spreads. It moves into your arms and legs. It sits behind your eyes. It makes the inside of your mouth feel wrong. It makes your thoughts circle the same places again and again. Every sound becomes sharper. Every smell becomes stronger. Every small movement from the person beside you becomes something your mind notices in a way it should not. Days passed. I do not know exactly how many. Time had no shape down there. There was no sunrise, no sunset, no clock, no phone, nothing to mark the hours except our breathing, our thirst, our weakening voices, and the way hope slowly turned into something thinner. We stopped talking about the beach. He stopped talking about food. We stopped making jokes. Eventually, we mostly stopped talking at all because speaking used energy and because there was nothing left to say. He died before I did. Maybe from starvation, maybe from the cold, maybe from fear. Maybe he simply lost the will to keep waiting in that dark little space. I do not know the exact moment it happened. I only remember looking at him and realizing that the person beside me was no longer really there. His eyes were open. They looked wide and frightened, like he had seen something coming for him at the end and could not turn away. I kept waiting for him to blink. I kept waiting for his chest to rise. It did not. Our bodies had been pressed together for so long that when he died, it felt like part of me had gone still too. His warmth began to fade, and with it went the last piece of comfort I had left. The cave became colder. The air became heavier. I was alone with him, but also not alone because I could not stop feeling like some part of him was still there with me.